Welcome back to another edition of the Gridiron Throne podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, and with me today is the Cuzzo, new to the league and to the podcast. He's going to be a future co-host on this podcast as well. Dan, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. It's a beautiful Monday. I am off today, so I am just kind of kicking it here, and it's another beautiful day. So, yeah.
Always a beautiful day. Nice temperature out, nice and cool. But enough about the weather. Let's talk some dynasty fantasy football or just football in general. So usually when Rich is on the podcast as well, we kind of go through a couple questions just to get to know you. As you're newer to the league, a couple of guys might not know you, also the podcast. So one of the questions I usually ask first is how long have you been playing fantasy? How long have you been playing dynasty for? And we'll start off with that.
Well, I've done some fantasy leagues before. One of the first ones I did was probably right around high school. We did one as like a class, either freshman or sophomore year of high school. We had a class in that, and then um, I've been playing the last couple years for fantasy. I've been in a couple dynasty leagues. Obviously, joined a couple with you this past year, and then I have one called the Hoff Bowl that is in our. I believe this is our third or fourth year coming up on that. That's a dynasty league, and obviously that's a football league, and that one we're going through a bit of a rebuild with these next couple of years. Unfortunately, we took Bijan last year, so we like that pick. This year, got to see who who we're looking at this year. I have the number one pick in that league this year, which makes it interesting. So I got some homework to do with that. I don't know if I'm taking Caleb, or if I'm going to try to trade down, get a couple extra picks. But yeah, fantasy wise, to answer your question, yeah, I'm versed. I'm versed.
Yeah. And so basically with that you said you have the first overall pick in that league and probably you had it the year before, so obviously you're going through a rebuild. Who are your quarterbacks in that league?
Yeah, so when we drafted a couple years ago, I had Russell and Kirk, and it's a league where you can start two quarterbacks because you got the super flex.
Yeah.
So, um, I tried to when I drafted that, I probably could have drafted a little bit younger, not just at the quarterback position, but overall. But I got hit with a couple tough ones. I drafted Chris Carson in that league, who obviously had that neck thing, and now he decided to retire. I also took a chance on AB because he was with Brady that year, and he was having a good year. And then, of course, we all know what happened. So I've had a few people that are out of the league who were big players for me, but uh, I also traded Russell last year. So my main quarterback right now is Kirk in a two quarterback league. So
Right on. Yeah, I can feel you on the AB situation with Brady. So going into 2021, I just rolling everybody, steamrolling, go into the championship week, and that's the same week that AB decided to take his jersey off, take his shirt off, and run off the field midway through the game. I'm not going to say that cost me, but that didn't help the cause of losing in the championship. I've also lost in the championship this previous year too, not because of AB, but I can feel you on the AB one.
yeah,
That being said, so this league that you're joining to, that I run is our longest tenured one. It's been going on since 2015. We've had a diverse group of winners, and when I mean diverse, we've had like four different teams win the whole thing, multiple repeat winners. So you'll see a couple of them within the league. You also see the trophies next to their name. But pretty much we have like a core four of guys that are still remaining from the 10-man original draft. A couple guys retired. A couple of guys, just weren't good fits for dynasty, so we, filtered through. So, good news is you're joining a really good, good diverse group of people who overall just love to trade, and it's a pretty active league and it's competitive to say the least. But that being said, let's talk about your favorite player that you've ever had on your team.
Favorite player, this could be any fantasy league, any team.
For football, yeah.
Let's see here. That's a good question. Favorite player to have. Just off the top of my head, the one year that we won, when I was referencing back in high school, I had Megatron on that team,
Nice.
and that was one of those years where he's catching basically almost two touchdowns every single game,
It
and
was
I
ridiculous.
mean, yeah, it was. I mean, we had a couple other. I think we had Rogers, we had MJD back when he was still kicking it with the Jaguars. We had a couple other people, but those were the big three. But Megatron, those couple of years, and that year where it's just like it was 20 to 30 points almost every week. It was unreal.
Yeah, and I can't imagine, like, having someone I mean, I can now because I drafted Mahomes in this league and then traded him away recently for Burrow, but, I can't imagine drafting somebody to that nature of, Megatron, where he was a top 2 pick, I think, in that draft, and just an incredible talent week in and week out. It would've been cool to play back I mean, I remember playing back then, but nothing competitive like what we're playing now. But, like, getting, like, Randy Moss on your team, like, having those guys week in and week out, like, doing that I mean, one of the years I won, just a regular fantasy league, I had, um, Adrian Peterson in his MVP season, which he was one of my favorites to have on a team, but I honestly, this is a far out there one. I really enjoyed having, Jason Witten on my team because he was a guaranteed, like, at least 15, 20 points a week, and that would help you, win just because the tight end position was so slim at that point. Now it's it's incredible after what last year's class brought us.
Yeah, Witten was all reliable, right? He would get you. I mean, he would do just enough, right? And then he'd have those weeks where he catches a couple touchdowns, get you 100 yards or more. He was uh, he was like I said, all reliable. And then you look at, like you said, the tight ends. Now you look at the tight ends, present day, and you've got some of the best options to throw to. Really, I mean, Kelsey's one of the best. The Kelsey Mahomes connection right now is probably the best connection we've got in football. Um, Kittle, I'm not the biggest fan of Purdy, but Kittle is still a top, target out there at the tight end position. Big fan of Mark Andrews. So
Oh yeah.
that tight end position, I mean, those guys, when you got a big body like that who can run a route and he's got great hands, scary.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll finish up right here with the interview of, what's either your greatest win that you can think of that just sticks with you that you won that year and it was like unbelievable, or and you can do both if you so choose, but what's one that like a loss that just like eats away at you? Because I have a number of them, so I want to hear from someone else.
Well, so I did a baseball dynasty, or not dynasty. It was just a baseball draft or whatever a couple years ago for fantasy, and Um, I came up so close. I felt like I was, we obviously you don't have like manager of the year awards for fantasy, but I felt like I was that guy that year. Yeah, I had some great pickups that year, both position players and pitcher wise. I was able, I drafted well, but it was my first time doing fantasy baseball, so I learned a few things going through the draft and all that, but I was in the semifinals and ended up losing by, I don't know, it was a handful of points. And I just felt like, I had a good team, right? And you have a handful of key injuries towards the end of the year. You had those couple pickups. I had a couple key pickups that year, and then team was still rolling, looking good. And then right there at the end, I think it might have even been a double week
Okay.
playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. So it was, oh man, when you lose by just a handful of points, like 4, 5, 6 points, something like that, it is like it makes you want to take your computer and just take it, in the driveway and run over it with your car.
Yeah, I know the feeling, because like I said, I've yet to win this league for football at least. I made the championship in 21 and last year, and 21 lost by 20, could have been one. could have been one. And then last year, this past year, I lost to Jeremy. Shout out the champ. We have to hit him on the pod eventually. He had a huge, so he actually started Amari Cooper, and so, he put up a goose egg that Thursday because he didn't play. And I wasn't really, obviously I don't want to get overconfident on it because I was like, oh, okay, he could come out and win. And of course, the rest of his team just lit it up. He had Jalen Hurts, Devontae went off for like 40 something points. His defense, because this is an IDP league as well. Um, his defense stuck it to me pretty much. So no matter pretty much what I would have done, I probably would have still lost. But still, that one doesn't eat away at me as much as some of the other ones, but, like, for baseball, I've made, as you know, three-time champ in that one, so, had to, show off the rings on that one, but I've had a couple one-point losses, like, last season going into the playoffs, I, lost by 1 going into the Sunday night, and it was all, like, you know, the Cubs pitcher at the time, of course, it was a Cubs pitcher, had a walk, strikeout, walk, finished the inning, gave up a run, walked again, and it was just back and forth, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna win." I would have lost that year anyway, but still, 1 point losses just eat away. But luckily last year redeemed myself and won it outright. So
It's funny because I actually forgot about this. I think this was at least 2 or 3 years ago as well. This was one of the other leagues. Now I'm in 4 or 5 different fantasy leagues, and I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm scrambling to remember everything. But you brought up Devontae, and if any of my other friends in that league end up seeing this, they're already laughing because I was in the championship game, and you talk about losing by a point. It was either a point or less than a point, because we got the decimals in there. And Devontae had one of those weeks where he caught at least 12 passes, 15 passes. So you got all those points for the catch. Then he had either 2 or 3 touchdowns, and I don't know if it was 150
yep.
to 200 yards, but he ends up putting up some monstrous game. And I'm thinking, you know what? Like, I should have this game in the bag, right? I should be the championship. I was playing COD upstairs with a couple of my buddies online. I had my phone, I was watching the score, and I think they were kind of watching it with me too. And they didn't want to say anything because Devontae keeps having this crazy game, and like, I was starting to get a little quiet, and then yeah, I'll be honest with you. That was one of those memories that I tried to repress with alcohol the last couple of years, and you just brought it back up for me. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could be helpful and, reliving your PTSD.
Yeah,
Because I do it all the time. Like I look back, sometimes I'll click on the Fantrax app and I'll like click it and I'm like, oh, like that just it stings, but that's why we play it. It's a game of chance overall, some skill. Um, you know, I could debate that all day, whether, I say regular season's about 80-20 on skill to luck. Maybe we could even go as low as 70-30. On regular season, I think if you are active on the waiver wire, you make the necessary trades, easily make the playoffs. But once you hit the playoffs, it's a complete reverse. It's a 30% chance skill and then 70% luck, if not more. Because you never know. Like I said, all these situations that we've even gone over, one player makes that big of a difference. But yeah. Yeah, we're happy to have you in the league. And I can show you what your team looks like. I know you've probably glanced at it, but we'll share it on the screen just so we get a live reaction here to what you think of it.
yeah, I've looked at it a little bit. I've got a few people I like. Just right off the top, Um, obviously, I mean, Carr. All right, I like Carr. Do I love Carr? No, but
I don't think
especially
anyone does.
dynasty wise,
Yeah.
yeah. But I like Carr, and he's a serviceable. He's more than a serviceable guy. Uh, Devon, how do you say his last name? Is it Achan?
Chan. I think it's Chan.
Achan. So like him a lot. He's great. He's got that type of as the commentators in our Madden sports game would say back in the day. He's got get away from the cop speed. Uh, he's
Love it.
great. Love him. You just need him to stay healthy. Brees, obviously, I'm a big fan of Brees as well. He needs to stay healthy. That's another injury, case. But if he stays healthy, him and Devon, those two should, I mean, be some of the top. Honestly, they should be top 10 backs. I think this
Both
year.
of them.
I think they're both great.
in my dynasty rankings at least, yeah, both of them are in my top 10. As long as HN gets his chances, I can't see why he wouldn't be.
So I like I said, Carr, not bad. Those two running backs, okay, that's a solid start. Then you get to the receivers, and this is where I was looking at it just a little bit last night. I was trying to go over some other stuff too for the pod today, but this is where, for me, I've got a couple picks. This is where I would try to probably go for. I've got to look at the defense as well. I looked at that a little bit, but um, I would start probably trying to get some receivers. Some of these, I know this class is a decent receiver class, and
Yeah,
we've got. I like Pittman, but do I love Pittman? I mean, he's coming off a nice year. I don't know enough
yeah,
about him, but I do like him. Marquise Brown, uh, like that. Nothing more, nothing less. Brandon Cooks, he's solid, but uh, not necessarily. I wouldn't want either of those guys in my top two starting receiver slot personally. So,
no,
from a receiver standpoint, I'd like to try to get better there. McBride, I've heard his name a little bit. He's supposed to be decent. He's pretty young. And Bryce Young, um, tough rookie campaign. So, not really sure what to do with him. Obviously, he's just coming off of one season, but um, and there's not a lot around him either. To be
no,
fair, with Carolina, you got to give him a
yeah,
lot more to work with. But you know what? There were a couple other rookie quarterbacks that did a lot more this year. Obviously, Stroud, Richardson, before he got hurt the second time it was out for the year, looked like he was pretty good with the Colts. So, um, Bryce, I still have questions about. I don't know about you.
yeah. The jury's not out on him yet. I mean, I do think that personally, I wouldn't have taken him at the pick that he was drafted in fantasy at least, because he doesn't have the weapons around him. He does have Adam Thielen, and that's pretty much it. Um,
Yeah.
they don't have their first this year, so it's not gonna, help them much. But if they can kind of try to make it alluring for them to get to Carolina, I mean that's I'm a Jets fan, and I would hate to be a Carolina Panthers fan at this point. Yeah, Bryce is tough to judge though at this point, just because there's not much around him. But they're going to be down, so they're going to be throwing a lot, so that could help you at least in the super flex aspect. And as you touched on, Trey McBride, that's a steal. Evan Ingram came off a hot year. I think he ended up finishing tight end one, at least in our format because it is a tight end premium, so you get a 1.5 for tight end
Okay.
points as well, and then obviously
Cool.
it's super flex IDP. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously this team has some work to it, as you can see. Um, you could play a lot of cleanup, but I mean, would it be safe to say that you're open for trades to the league?
Yes, I was actually. I forgot to send a text to Rich last night, but I know he's got a couple. He's got the fourth, fifth, and sixth picks, I think, in the first round this year. So,
Yeah.
Rich, I'm gonna have to holler at you.
All right. Well, I'll make sure he sees it and he listens to the pod, and we'll have to have some chats with him on that one, or you have him. I'm not involved with that. So, anyway, yeah. I mean, honestly, some of these wide receivers could have been a lot better too. Bateman's just been out of you know hit or miss. Jalen Hyatt probably not very good, but he got him late. It wasn't an early pick. Rashid Shaheed, I think he's a free agent, so we'll see where he ends up. Shakir might be the number two in Buffalo. So, like I said, at least you have your picks. So, and you have 1-3. So that's huge for you too. So you could really build through the draft and then obviously trade whatever you need to do to kind of make the team better. But I mean, when I'm looking at it, like it's not the worst team that you could have taken over for sure. Um, and it could have been a lot worse. But you also have Nick Chubb coming off the injury too.
Yeah, I saw Chubb. Obviously, we'll have to see. I know Chubb had a tough injury. He had one or two surgeries on the knee, or whatever happened. With I feel bad, man, because he's been so good. He's been a friggin' workhorse for them the last couple of years. So, hopefully that knee is good. But I that could be one of those injuries where he's been in the league a couple of years. He's got a little wear and tear. So hopefully he comes back and he's still pretty much the same guy. But that certainly could be one of those injuries where he might not be the same guy when he comes back. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I mean, it's the second time that's happened to him too, so we'll see. But I mean, I like Chubb. I'm very high on him,
Yeah,
but we'll see what he bounces back with.
agreed. I've been a Chubb fan since he was at was he Georgia?
Yeah, yeah, he was in Georgia.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've been a fan of his since since he was at Georgia. I mean, he's a solid back. So yeah, hopefully he comes back and he's good to go.
Yeah. All right, moving on to as you mentioned, we're talking about draft picks and trades and everything. So let's move on to the 24 class. So just a brief overview, and I'll turn it over to you to see what you have to say on it. But the 24 class is good. I'm not going to kick around it and ruin any type of potential trade chances I have to get a pick early. But um, you know, the 24 class is very quarterback, wide receiver heavy. Um, Unlike the previous year where we had the running backs that were pretty much carrying it, Achan, Kendry Miller, Bijan, Gibbs, the guys like that. And it did have a good wide receiver class. But this one is just gonna blow it out of the water. They ran almost, I think they might have said on the fastest, it might have been the fastest 40 times across the board for all these wide receivers and maybe even just all the players in general, which is good to see. The league's just getting faster. But overall, when you look at it, what stood out most to you?
I think you hit on both of them. The quarterbacks and the wide receivers seem to be the two um, maybe most glaring strengths, if you will. I know there's a couple other positions out there that are highly touted too. Maybe not offensive skill positions, more like tackles and stuff like that. But um, yeah, there's especially with the combine. I mean, I was reading up on some people. Um, I mean, my dad's been high on Bo Nix for the last year or two, and yeah, I know you give me that look. He had, as someone that if you think of trying to build around, you give him a couple of years, he's not going to probably be someone that comes in and starts right away, but he got an A grade, I think, coming out of the combine is what I was reading up on. He made all the throws, looked pretty solid. He's not going to be nearly as big of a name as um, he's not going to be nearly as big of a name as obviously the top couple guys coming out, but
Right.
he's a guy where if you want to try to go for other people in the earlier couple rounds, and then you want to maybe take a chance on someone like him, he graded pretty high after your top tier is Caleb, and maybe if your second tier is maybe May and Daniels, your guys maybe right underneath them that you could maybe get in, like I said, one of those kind of middle rounds for our fantasy pickings. He seems to be an interesting pick to me. You know what I mean? Like I said, not a Caleb or a May, but a guy who graded well at the combine and could be interesting. And like you said, the receivers too. That's what I've been looking at a lot. I still need to do a fair amount of work with some of the combine and a lot of the players coming out myself, but um, it did seem like just like it seemed like the receiver class you could find solid receivers in the second, third rounds for this draft, at least fantasy wise.
Absolutely. And just touching on it, yeah, Bo Nix isn't going to be a bad one. Like I said, he might go in the later rounds of, maybe a mid-round draft, maybe like round 3, 4, and just being one of those speculative, backups. And if he comes in there, he can sling it. That's one thing that he can do. I just have a bad taste in my mouth from Bo Nix from when he was at Auburn. After watching him being this highly touted quarterback and just completely just kind of shit down his leg. But he was at Oregon, and his numbers might be a little bit, inflated this year just because of how much they did throw the ball. Not saying anything against him, but yeah, I think that's a good ad that he might be like a solid pickup, and he probably won't even cost you much either.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those sleepers, if you will, right? Like he's not one of
Yeah,
those top, he's not one of your top guys coming out. But like I said, if you have other needs and you want to throw a bone at a guy like a Bo Nix in one of those later, middle late rounds, he'll probably be there. And if like I said, if like you said, if the investment's right, if you get him at the right pick, with the right team, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Um, and one thing I would like to touch on too is so running back class this year, a lot of big names, from college that are in it. I don't know. I think the difference when people say that this running back class is trash, I think people misconstrue it where they think, oh, it's just garbage. No one's going to be good. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just don't think that there's going to be the high draft picks like we saw with Bijan Gibbs. Even with like when Brees Hall was drafted in the second and it was an early second pick, I can't really put my finger on anyone particularly from this running back class that would go in the first round. I am higher on Marshawn Lloyd at USC. He tested incredible at the combine. Doesn't really mean much, but the intangibles are there. So he might be one, but like I have a feeling like the first round, if we did a mock right now, there'd be three or four quarterbacks taken in the first, and then a bunch of wide receivers, and then obviously Bowers would be in there mixed up. But what we'll do too is we'll plan out like different days to go over just specific positions with quarterbacks in the rookies and stuff and wide receivers, so we could spend more time discussing players, player comps if we have them, and just kind of go from there. Just so we give a nice broad view of it, not just glance over it. But we'll definitely have to do a couple mock drafts just to see where everyone stands. It'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Brock Bowers because I've had my eye on him a little bit, and he seems to be pretty solid. I mean, as far as the tight ends go, I don't know if people are talking about that position. Usually, it's not a real deep one, but he seems to be, one of those guys who could be big at the next level.
Yeah, it seems like that might be your pick at 1-3 now, huh?
Hey, you know what? We still got to do some research, as we like to say. But yeah, no, we're definitely looking at a few different people. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll just kind of like touch briefly on it. Yeah, Combine was awesome to see Xavier Worthy run that 4.2. I think it was 4.21 or 4.29. I know it's a big difference, but he ran an incredible 40. I'd like to see where he lands. I think he's going to be maybe a second round pick, maybe late first. I mean, a lot of these teams need wide receivers. I just hope that he breaks the curse of all these fast run or wide receivers that have been drafted in the first round. I saw a list of it, and then the first name that comes to mind is like Darius Hayward Bay, Henry Ruggs, Jamison Williams currently, all these guys that can run a fast 40 have not really panned out. Jamison Williams at least still has a chance. He's still in the league and he kind of showed some bright spots, but being someone that has had drafted him a couple years ago, he didn't turn out the 1.5 or 1.6 that I had to use it.
No, you know what? It's funny you bring him up because I took him over Olave. I could have taken Chris Olave, and I'm kicking myself for not taking him because man, he's looked great in the league these last 2 years. And Jameson obviously was hurt that first year and literally they didn't want to play him, which okay, that's
Right.
fine. But then this year, what did he do this year? I think his biggest play he had this year was maybe in the playoffs when they gave him that handoff and he ran it. I mean, the guy's a receiver. He's done nothing. They yeah, it's interesting you talk about speed because if you've got a guy with that type of speed who can actually catch the ball, you have a home run. But
Right.
yeah, you got to be. I mean, it doesn't always work that way where you have those guys with that crazy, crazy speed, but they don't always have the hands to go with it. So, yeah, when you could find a guy like that, like Tyreek is, I mean, he's a bit of an outlier.
Yeah, he is.
He's a friggin' cheetah. But when you could find someone with that type of speed and they can, actually catch, 8 to 10 passes a game or something like that, man, I mean, forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we hit a good stopping point. Unless you have anything else you want to bring up about the 24 class, as just a brief overview. I don't want to get too deep into it right now. Um,
No, I think you hit on all the big points. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, um, everyone in the league now knows you, which is good. Obviously, they can reach out to you for trades. Be prepared to get a bunch of shitty ones, just because they're
Yeah,
probably from me. It's going to be a kicker that we don't even have anymore. I'm just going to send them your way.
nice. Thank you.
um, you're welcome. You're welcome. But yeah, welcome to the league. You're going to enjoy it, and hopefully, we don't beat up on you too bad.
Yeah, you know what? I guess I would just say take it easy on me the first couple of years, super I'm stoked to be in the league, but yeah, take it easy on me, guys. Okay, I gotta get my feet wet. Let me dip my toes in the water a little bit. All right, jeez.
Get used to it. Get used to it.
Yeah, come on.
All right.